internet has become a battlefield against religious freedom, against free speech. We see it all over the place. Twitter and other places where there's people taken off or things being excluded and blocked. It's a serious problem. We're going to talk about that in the second half of the show with an individual who's taking a very concerted, aggressive effort to combat this internet censorship tyranny. But in the first half of the show, I want to talk about another area of tyranny we're facing in our society today, and that's dealing with our college campuses, our universities. In fact, we have something we're going to be giving away later in this segment dealing with that. But to talk about an actual case we're dealing with specifically, I have with us here in the studio Michael Peffer. He's one of our attorneys. He heads up our Orange County office in Southern California. Michael, thank you for being on the program.
My pleasure, Brad. Thanks.
Now, Michael, on behalf of the Pacific Justice Institute, we're defending a professor, not a college student, but a professor who's taking a real hit because of his expression in the classroom, not unreasonable expression either. Give us the facts about what's taking place here, because this is not the first time we at Pacific Justice Institute have had to take on a case defending a professor because of this new wave of purging and censorship that is taking place in our college campuses.
That's right, Brad. Our guy, his name is Eric Thompson, and Eric Thompson was a professor, a tenured professor, which I think most people think of tenured like, hey, they're there forever. Well, apparently not if your ideas are not going with the mainstream, because our guy was a tenured professor at Moreno Valley College and taught sociology. And you know what? His methods were liked by everyone. He got review after review after review by both his peers and by the students.
So how long has he been doing this? How established has he been with this kind of a positive track record?
11 years.
11 years.
That's right.
Okay, and then something happened that suddenly everything shifted against him, and this. Give us the breakdown.
Yeah,
of this.
well, what eventually happens is that he goes all this time. He doesn't change his curriculum every year. It's like, oh, now I've got about something new, and I want to be even more irritating. No, he's simply teaching sociology, and as we know, sociology deals with family units, a family structure. And we got to the point when Obergefell, the same-sex marriage case, was before the Supreme Court.
Right.
And as a way to spur conversation, our guy mentioned that one of the Supreme Court justices, during oral arguments, made a statement to the effect of, hey, how about if we have 4 lawyers get married? Again, it was a question by a sitting Supreme Court justice of the side that was for same-sex marriage.
On the side that was for same-sex marriage. Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Well, he was asking that of that attorney, the attorney that for same-sex marriage. Well, what about 4 lawyers? So our client asked that same question. What about that? Again, in a sociology class, perfectly appropriate subject for a sociology class. And one student apparently complained because of some comments that other students made, but our guy was just making the point that, listen, are we ready for this? Is this something that is appropriate? Now, from that, this evolved this whole bunch of stuff where they were saying he said things that he didn't even say, but because he got the eye of the community, the so-called diversity community.
And when you say community, you mean the high-ups in the university, not the people living in the town.
No, I'm talking about the student community, and then the academic community and administrative community within the school.
Within the school, gotcha, with the college.
So the diversity committee, who's made up of students and administrators and such, which effectively what we're finding out is that diversity means you want to accept everything except for a conservative, sometimes Judeo-Christian view.
Okay, it's really very hypocritical. I've seen this so much. We're pro-diversity as long as you believe the way we do.
That's right.
And we see it all over our college campuses across the country.
That's
Even
right.
in some private, quote, Christian universities, we're seeing this garbage play out, and it's dangerous. It's intolerant. It's dangerous to people. and to our society, and even universities even being an open marketplace of ideas, which
That's right.
now they're becoming one of the most hate-filled, discriminatory, bigoted institutions in America are right there, our universities and across the country. So attacking professors, though, is very dangerous because that's a part of stimulating the open marketplace of ideas. And that's all he was doing. He was saying he was opening the discussion. He was opening the matter up for debate, for students to talk about. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? It's a pending case for the United States Supreme Court.
Right.
It's a sociology class.
Yes.
Seems like he was right in line with what is expected given the time, given the subject matter, given his job and responsibility as a sociology professor. Yet, as you said, the diversity committee said, oh, no, not that perspective. I guess they just wanted one perspective? I mean, they said only in teaching that same-sex marriage is great and everyone else are homophobes. That's the only accepted lingo that's allowed in that university, I guess?
You know, what's interesting is that when we had this recent arbitration, and we had, they had maybe 10 people that testified that were on or a part of this diversity committee. And we asked them all, what do you think about viewpoint diversity? Everyone's like, it looks like a doe in a headlight. It's like, what are you talking about? Well, of course we're for viewpoint diversity. Well, and what we mean, obviously, by viewpoint is that it's presumed unconstitutional if you curtail speech because of viewpoints.
Right.
And that's a presumptively unconstitutional attitude. But their position is it's that the shout goes out against anyone who has a viewpoint that might be critical or might not be supportive of the same-sex marriage, the gay lifestyle, all of these things that diversity has come to mean.
Right.
And our professor, Mr. Thompson, he wasn't a big, I'm going to just poke these people in the eye and see what they do. No, he was provocative though. And
you're supposed to be as a professor of sociology.
That's right.
You're supposed to, stimulate conversation, thought, critical thinking.
Right.
And that's all he was doing.
That's right. And you mentioned that earlier about how this is the university, the court cases that support academic freedom.
Right.
All say the university is a place for ideas to be exchanged. Sometimes people are going to be discouraged. Sometimes they're going to be uncomfortable. But that's what it's for. That's how we learn.
Right.
We either learn, the court cases say, we either solidify our opinion because of it or we change our opinion because of it.
Right.
But that's health.
Right.
That's healthy. So
when I went to University of Texas School of Law, it's a liberal law school. All the top 20 law schools fit in the category of pretty liberal law school. Actually, most law schools are liberal law schools.
Exactly.
I knew what I believed. I knew what I thought. I came out of those 3 years of law school all the more resolved as to what I believed, why I believed it, because it stimulated critical thinking.
That's right.
And I wasn't expelled because I'd raise my hand and give an alternative viewpoint. Now, maybe today they would do that. I'm not going to pass judgment on where they are today because I don't know.
Right.
But the reality is our universities are not places of free thought and ideas. They're places of censorship, stigmatizing, hostility, even expulsion of students potentially because of what they say or think. And in this case, even this professor. Now, moving forward, we're representing him. What happened? Where are we at?
Well, what happened is they issued him a notice of intent to dismiss him from the university or the college, and so we went through the process with him. It's a long process,
right,
for a tenured professor, and they end up terminating him. And so once he was terminated, then he gets another step, which is this arbitration. And we went through that with him. We
represented him. You represented him.
Exactly. And Mr. Thompson is a great client too. He's with us in this, and of course we're with him. We believe 100% of what is happening here, that he's being railroaded because of his viewpoints. And some of his viewpoints, some of the alleged, I'll call them viewpoints, he didn't voice. But so, for instance, I'll give you a quick example. So They said he was against mothers working outside the home. Well, how did he communicate that? Well, he said that his wife stays at home and takes care of their children. Well,
so hence the presumption is he thinks every woman should stay at home,
exactly,
no matter what their circumstances.
Exactly. And he called it wisely. That was descriptive rather than proscriptive. That was describing what was happening rather than saying everybody ought to be like
right.
that.
Or if he said, what if his wife was working? He says, my wife's working. Well, should he be criticized to say that he's condemning all women who stay at home and rear their kids or homeschool their kids? So I think you're right. It's a it was a witch hunt. I hate to use that term because we see it used a lot, but this really turned out to be an academic witch hunt.
That's right.
By this college. Once again, what's the name of the college, university?
It's Moreno Valley
Community College. Moreno Valley Community College.
Yeah.
This is at a community college level.
Right.
And I think people need to realize it's at the top. We see this at Harvard and Yale and Stanford and other high-end universities. We also see this kind of bigotry and intolerance at the community college level. In fact, some people tell me that's even worse at junior college or community college level. So people need to be really careful when they have their children enrolled in these universities. Realize, or if you go to work as a professor, even if you have tenure,
that's right,
apparently that doesn't apply if it's not politically correct according to the diversity committee.
That's right.
And as opposed to just basic quality academic instruction.
Right.
Folks, if you're listening to this program and you'd like information on how to protect your kids in colleges and universities, I strongly encourage you to go to our website, pacificjustice.org, pacificjustice.org, or shorter version, pji.org, pji.org. And there you can sign up to download a document that talks about the constitutional rights of students on campus. The constitutional rights of students on campus. This is our gift to you for supporting Pacific Justice Institute. We also have a book called Reclaim Your School that you'll find very insightful and very helpful dealing with K through 12 and students' rights and parents' rights and others to positively impact public education, where a lot of these problems are beginning and birthed in our society today. So, Michael, thank you very much for what you're doing, and keep up the great work.
My pleasure.
As for my perspective, my background as an evangelical Christian, and how in reading scriptures, I believe that if someone is born with like a defect or something like that, we live in a fallen world. But I don't believe we should, if someone is made decisively male or decisively female, I think they should be who God created them to be.
I didn't transition because I wanted to transition. It was more of a decision that I realized I couldn't live as male anymore because it was, for me, living a lie. I wasn't male, I was female.
Right.
And a lot of these people who are living their truths as transgender people did not want to have this seen as this is a choice.
The suicide rate is very high for transgenders. I think it's like 41.
Transgender people
From transgender people, thank you. And I do appreciate that, because I can only say transgenders. So for transgender people, that it's like 41%.
It would be a lot easier and a lot less, I would have a lot fewer issues in my life if I were not transgender. It used to be, when I came out, they were calling it gender reassignment surgery, but nowadays they refer to it as gender affirmation surgery. It's affirming your gender, not creating gender. So it's...
But yeah, I guess it's sort of a word thing. Because to me, it's like it's when you change your gender. If every gene in your body says you're male and then you change it to female, you're biologically changing your gender.
Treat everybody like I want to be treated. Treat them with love, because love matters.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't have to think the same way. They don't have to believe the same way to love someone and to be willing to connect with someone. And
look for commonalities, don't look for differences.
Right. And folks, if you decide to support the Pacific Justice Institute on either a one-time or a monthly basis, please go to our website. It's pji.org, pji.org. And there you can download the information that we have, the free information we have in our resources, including the Students' Constitutional Rights on Campus. Students' Constitutional Rights on Campus. It's very helpful information. Along with the book, Reclaim Your School, you can download that for free. All about your rights as a parent, students, people in ministry, even teachers, their rights to live their faith and have a positive impact on public schools and public education. These are our gifts to you among our many other resources at our website, pji.org, pji.org. Now, we have with us on the line someone who I highly respect. I've known for a long time, Dr. Jerry Johnson. Dr. Johnson is the head of the National Religious Broadcasters. Welcome to the show, Dr. Don Johnson. Appreciate you having me being on the program.
Good to be with you, Brad.
Great. Now, we've got a problem, and you've noticed this problem because the National Religious Broadcast Association, I mean, you're sort of like the head entity, if you will, over all religious broadcasts, whether it's radio, television, internet, across the United States. It's a huge consortium that are under your influence and direction. And so you've seen a real problem taking place with regards to free speech, religious expression, particularly with regards to the internet. Explain what you've noticed.
Well, it's interesting, Brad. 75 years ago, the main Bible preachers and teachers were taken off the radio. And there were three major radio companies that just took them off. And it's a long story, but that's why NRB was formed, to get them back on, and we did. But now fast forward, right now you've got the three major social media platforms, Facebook, Google, YouTube, and Apple, and they are censoring conservative content and Christian content. And NRB is standing up for free speech, and that's why we've started Internet Freedom Watch.
Yeah, and at first people thought, people complaining about this were just, conspiracy buffs and extremists and weirdos. But now it's not even disputable. It's very clear, and sometimes they'll come out and apologize, but we see so much taking place with regard to censorship. We at Pacific Justice have had to deal with it. And you have organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center that is a very discriminatory, anti-faith organization, and they have really been a major influence, I believe, with regards to some of the censorship taking place. What role do you think they're having, and do you see this as a danger with regards to these institutions giving such blind trust to such an extremist, hostile, hate-filled organization and powerful organization like the Southern Poverty Law Center?
Well, look, people could just go to the New York Times today and see the piece written by David French today. That columnist is calling for what NRB's been calling for, which is essentially that the social media platforms adopt a First Amendment standard. That is a free speech standard. That's really what Apple, Facebook, and Google should have. But instead, they've adopted a hate speech filter. Now, what's problematic about that is they're using this left-wing group, you mentioned them, the Southern Poverty Law Center. In fact, the article today talks about the problem with that because, for instance, Southern Poverty Law Center has labeled ADF a hate group. Now, ADF has won numerous cases before the Supreme Court of the United States. They're not a hate group, but they are a conservative constitutional group.
Well, yeah, they've labeled Pacific Justice Institute a hate group. They've labeled a number of organizations, ministries, even some churches, hate groups.
And Family Research Council was put on their hate map. And you remember a gunman, motivated by the hate map, loaded a backpack full of Chick-fil-A sandwiches and went to the FRC headquarters and, shot the security guard and was going to shoot and kill as many people as he could and stuff those Chick-fil-A sandwiches in their faces. That's what he said, all motivated by the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate map.
Right.
And that's the kettle calling the skillet black there. I mean, they're actually purveying hate towards conservatives and Christians.
Right.
And they're triggering people, that are leftist and liberals, to strike back. And so what's happened
With violence.
yesterday
Yeah.
is pretty interesting. And it looks like a coordinated move. Facebook yesterday, Google, YouTube, and Apple all removed Alex Jones. And now Alex Jones is out there way on the edge, as you know. He's a conspiracy theorist. And but they took him off. This was what should concern us, for hate speech. Now, if that's the standard, a lot of conservative and Christian content is falling in that category. And French argued today in the Times that actually they should go after Jones for libel or for, just false information. I mean, Jones is being sued right now by the Sandy Hook victims.
Right. And if you're on the air, you're not immune from libel, defamation, and slander.
And
so,
what's interesting, thinking about the Southern Poverty Law Center, they just had to pay over $3 million to the William Foundation because they libeled them. They make them a hate group. So throwing this hate language around, that doesn't get us anywhere. If someone, slanders you or is guilty of libel, well, you could remove such a post. But people need to know this. It's real. Facebook and Twitter and Google, they're taking people down like Dennis Prager, Chuck Colson, Alan West, Todd Starnes, Lila Rose. I mean, brand conservatives. Mike Huckabee have been removed.
Yeah, Franklin Graham was ostracized by the Southern Poverty Law Center and attacked. And Dr. Ben Carson was attacked by their organization. So we see that and then those who've been removed actually felt the brunt of it on the internet very directly. It's very real. These are people who are very respected. People may not agree with their Judeo-Christian biblical worldview or conservative worldview, but to take them off the number one the fastest growing forums and platforms for communication in a free society is extremely dangerous. Now, you're doing something about it, Dr. Johnson, and I want you to talk about what you're doing and why we at Pacific Justice Institute are so excited about the steps you're taking in the right direction to combat this.
We've started something called Internet Freedom Watch, internetfreedomwatch.org. So your listeners could go to this website, and what they'll see is a clear documentation, beginning with Chuck Colson's Manhattan Declaration taken out of Apple's App Store, up until just recently. I mean, Congressman Marsha Blackburn announced her campaign for the Senate, and when she did, she tweeted it out. Twitter removed the tweet because she mentioned a critique of Planned Parenthood and abortion. So I'm sure that's not what the First Amendment founders had in mind, with a sitting congressman would essentially be censored by one of the main organs of communication. So we've documented. We actually have a place for your listeners, if they've been censored, or their church, or their preacher, to tell your story. And so we're keeping a running documentation. And what we're calling for, Brad, is that these companies would adopt a First Amendment standard, a free speech standard. Obviously, if someone threatens someone's life or violence, that should be taken down. Obviously, if there's something that's pornographic, that should be taken down.
Yeah.
But other than that, let's have a free town square, an open forum of ideas from the right, from the left, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, whoever. That First Amendment standard ought to be there because these companies pretend to be a kind of a town square, and that's really what they ought to be.
Well, and functionally, they're actually more powerful as a town square than even television in many times, or radio. I mean, people actually are spending more time on the internet now than many of these other traditional forums where we have clear free speech protections that have been implemented. And I think that we need to really think seriously long term about to what extent could these powerful platforms of expression really control thought in America. And that's why I really salute what you're doing with the internetfreedomwatch.org. It seems like that's a wonderful step in the right direction. Also, Jerry, I want people to know that we at Pacific Justice Institute are here to defend and represent those being censored because of their religious freedom rights being violated. I know, for example, we have the traditional cases like street preachers being prosecuted. I have 2 cases like that in Texas right now I'm dealing with. But it also plays into the non-traditional, which is dealing with the internet and forums like this.
And so your folks will know Greg Laurie out there in California, and they probably have heard that just yesterday it was announced that the signs showing him with a Bible in his hand have been rejected. He had already bought the advertisement in the malls. They've been doing them for some time. And now they said, because you have a Bible in your hand in these ads, it could trigger people. It could bother people.
Right. That's crazy. That's
so
crazy.
There is a mood in America against conservative and Christian talk, and we are being censored, and we need to wake up. We need to get engaged. We need to let these people know that we believe in the First Amendment, and they should too.
Yes.
We might move on to some other provider. So folks need to go to internetfreedomwatch.org, check out this website. We got some videos there, and report any instances that happen to them or their church.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to speak up and to get out that information. And then we can talk about it and put pressure. Like, for example, like the Irvine Spectrum, where that's the shopping area in Irvine, California, where they took down the advertisement for the Harvest Crusade for Greg Laurie and what he's doing. Even after they took the Bible off, they replaced it with another scene, another advertisement for the Harvest Crusade. They took that off then. They said that's still offensive.
I know.
So, I salute Pastor Greg Laurie for how he's dealt with it. He could have filed a lawsuit. He could have done that. He was very gracious, but yet he also, though, wasn't silent. And I think that's the key, is at the very least, we all need to speak up. And what you have here, the internetfreedomwatch.org, that's a great tool for people to take advantage of that opportunity to speak up, let their story be told. And they shouldn't be afraid, because as long as what they say is factually correct, then they don't have to worry about libel, slander, defamation. That's the key. As long as what you're saying is correct. And you can have statements of opinion. I think this is, Google is bad. I think they're evil. I think that's fine. Those are statements of opinion. And but if you make statements of fact, just make sure they're correct. You don't want to say that Google was threatened you with a $10,000 fine. If Google didn't actually threaten you with a $10,000 fine, you're safe, you're protected, and people should go there. And if they need legal help, I strongly encourage them to contact us at Pacific Justice Institute. We defend people without charge, literally all across the United States, without charge. And I really respect you, Dr. Jerry Johnson. Jerry, you're doing great work. And I encourage people to get behind this, what you're forming, internetfreedomwatch.org, and also to be praying for Jerry and his key work that he's doing so well, I might add, as the president of the National Religious Broadcasters Association. Jerry, thank you so much for your time and for being on this program.
Thanks, Brad, and thanks for the good work you're doing at Pacific Justice.
Our pleasure. God bless.
Bye-bye.
So, folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus of the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a great weekend.